So how do you create a cracking fantasy world that will abominate the reader's imagination and just completely annihilate their senses in every way possible? Well, no problem. I've got a video for you right here. It's about how to create a fantasy world, funnily enough. The first half of the video, I'm going to talk about the actual physical side of the world. Like, you know, the kingdoms, the mountains, the fields, the hills, anything that if you punch, you would probably break your fist, because it is a solid thing and you can just punch it and it wouldn't move because it's solid. So basically the first half of the video is about how to make the physical side of the world as best as possible. Yeah, I just said that. And the second half of the video is about how to make it seem real. I believe this is a more important part of the video because readers usually read to escape to another world. And so how can you make the world seem more real than the world? But if you're new here and you love stories and storytelling tips, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell, and I'll keep you updated with our future stream of videos. No problem. No problem. I mean, it's nothing. So tip number one about how to create a physical world. What do you draw on the map? What do the characters see when they look out across the world? What will the reader imagine if they read it? How do you do this? Well, this might be controversial, but I believe that there is one common trait that almost every fantasy world has in successful stories. This is that they all have highly unique features in the world. Of course, there are always the same kind of things like fields and mountains and valleys and deserts and all that. Those kind of things are the foundation of the world. It's fine. Deserts, forests, mountains, they're cool things, right? But I believe that all the great stories have some element that is unique. Just think about this for a moment. I'll use Lord of the Rings as an example. And of course, some fantasy worlds don't actually have very many unique ideas, and that's where they fall short. Lord of the Rings is a very good example of a place that has very unique features, where you just look at them and you're like, wow. Think about Hobbit holes, or the Eye of Sauron, or Rivendell. These are all places that have never really been seen in any other books before, and they are features that distinguish Middle-earth from any other world. I mean, what other world have you ever seen or imagined a tower with a flaming eye on top? Or have you read in stories about settlements as elegant as Rivendell, built into the cliff face of a beautiful valley? If you can create structures that are so unique they've never been seen before, it immediately makes the world stand out. But you could always argue that fantasy series like Harry Potter and Mistborn don't have very many unique parts in their world, because they're kind of set in the same place, Hogwarts and Luthadel. And so, wow, what? But also Hogwarts and Luthadel are also extremely unique. If you think about Hogwarts, it has so many secret hidden passageways, it just seems to be endless. And I mean, it has a flipping book called The Chamber of Secrets. It has the Room of Requirement and the hidden common rooms. And of course there are other parts of the world, for example the lake and the mermaids under the lake, or even the huge Quidditch stadium. That's pretty unique as well. Also, the Nobleman Keeps in Mistborn have crazy architecture, and Credit Shore as well, known as the Hill of 1,000 Spires, has a lot of secrets hidden within it, and that is a unique structure that Brandon Sanderson has created. And this again could be controversial, but I absolutely love the film Tron. Man, everybody hates it, but I love it. But why? Not because of the plot, not because of the characters, not because of all the main things that should make a story good, but because of my childish love of the world that is in Tron. I don't know, I just want to go there. That is a very good indication if your physical fantasy world is good. Would you want to go there and see it? Experience what it's like to be there. The only two reasons that I love Tron are because of the music and the world building. So the world building can actually save a bad story in some cases. That's why it's so important. So basically the tip is to create unique structures that are different from anything that has been created before. And so the second tip to create a physical world is perhaps another childish tip, but I believe it's so crazy when it's done right. It can create so much fascination, and that is to increase the scale and just create things that are just so beyond any amount of scale that we're used to. Lord of the Rings is an example again. The Eye of Sauron is actually almost 2 times taller than the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa. It sounds a bit simple and dumb to just say, make everything bigger, you know, make it bigger, bigger stickers. But the reason that I believe this is so effective is that because people people want to be, because they want to escape to worlds that are different from the world that they're living in. And by creating a huge scale that is so different from the world that we're in now, it makes it so much more different and easier to escape to. But once you've created the physical side of the world, how do you make it so that the world seems real, so that it has a unique but still consistent feel about it? Like this kind of place, you know, the reader kind of believes. The reader is tricked into thinking that this place actually exists. So tip number 3 about how to make it real is to create a set of sayings and idioms that are unique to that specific region in the world, that people constantly repeat in conversation, and it creates another level of consistency, because it's exactly the same in the real world. If you got teleported to a random place in the world, you could probably pretty quickly work out where you are. Not only do they speak a different language, they also probably say different words in that language. Oh hey! Woher kommst du? And so if you create a unique set of sayings and idioms for that specific region, lecker Schmecker. Oh, das ist mir Wurst. Gott, ich hab die Nase voll hier. Total voll. Then it makes it feel like it's a very high diversity, which makes it feel real. For example, in the Dark Tower, oh man, I love this flipping series. I'm gonna do a review on it, just read it. It's set in 2 different worlds, the real world and Midworld. And in Midworld, it's kind of entertaining as well. There is so many different sayings. For example, hi, if it does ya, tell me a beg. Long days and pleasant nights. It's funny to listen to. These sayings are constantly repeated in speech in the same way that we say things like, what's up? How you doing? Cool, it's raining cats and dogs out here. Eat your grapes, kids. Walla willy wingo. Better get your 5 a day. So tip 3 is to create a unique dialect for every area of your world so that it seems more real. You could even write down loads of different random sayings that you just come up with and assign these sayings to different parts of the world depending on what the people are like there. So tip number 4 is to create unique culture for all the different regions in the world dependent upon the priorities and the beliefs of the inhabitants. Cool, that was a mouthful. For example, in Lord of the Rings, crazy how I just keep coming back to this world, isn't it? It's almost like it's the perfect world. For example, the hobbits, the dwarves, the elves in Lord of the Rings are all very exclusive groups that have completely different ways of life, not to mention the orcs. While hobbits love hot dinners by the fire and comfort and warmth, dwarves like it more tough. They like it gritty! But they both lack the elegance of an elf. But I think the main point here is that every region in the world should be very different, because in the real world it's the same, because every country is so wildly different, and by replicating that diversity in the fantasy world, it makes it seem more realistic, because it's similar to our world, but of course because you're making it different, it's a completely different world that they can escape to, and so it seems real but still fantasy based and still like they can escape. Do it. So the 4th tip is to create these people groups that have their unique traditions and ways of life, and their lifestyle is completely different from the other people in the world, and so because of that it makes them exclusive and it separates them into regions and tribes. A perfect example is in the Hunger Games with all the districts which are all so different. It creates a tapestry of all these different cultures and ways of life, and we are attracted to that diversity. So the main way to distinguish them is to look at their lifestyle and look at what aspects of the lifestyle make them different to the other places in the world. For example, are they farmers or hunters or disciplined or lazy or rich or poor or introverted or extroverted? So many different categories that you can put peoples into. Peoples. So here's a quick summary of the 4 points that make a fabulous world that will pang. So the first one is to create structures or settlements that have never been seen before in other stories, that creates fascination when you see it, like Tron or the Eye of Sauron or whatever. Tip number 2 is to create a crazy big sense of scale, or you can make it really small or just different from the world that we live in, and they can feel like they're escaping. Tip number 3 is to create a set of sayings or idioms specific to each individual region in the world. And tip number 4 is to create distinct cultures that revolve around beliefs and priorities, simply their ways of life. So those are my 4 tips. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and comment what is your favorite fantasy world of all time, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.